The dim glow of the nursery's bioluminescent walls pulsed like a living heartbeat, casting shifting hues of deep indigo and soft emerald across the chamber. Mike knelt on the warm, scaled floor, his worn janitor's uniform stained with days of unyielding care. In his arms, the smallest of the quadruplets, Ilara, he'd named her in secret, nestled against his chest, her iridescent scales still soft as velvet from the hatching pouches. Her tiny claws gripped his collar with surprising strength, and she let out a contented trill that vibrated through his ribs, syncing with the rhythm of his own exhausted heart. Around them, her three siblings tumbled in a chaotic whirlwind of chirps and playful nips. Kale, the boldest, pounced on his brother's tail, while Lyra and Thorn rolled across the padded mats, their 6 limbs flailing in delight. Mike chuckled softly, the sound rough from lack of sleep. "Easy there, spark plugs. You're gonna wear me out before your mom gets back." He'd been saying that for weeks now, ever since the Queen's royal guard had vanished into the void of some distant campaign, leaving these precious lives behind in the sterile heart of the palace. As the human janitor assigned to the lower maintenance levels, Mike had never imagined this. His days were supposed to be mopping nutrient spills and scrubbing waste conduits in the underbelly of the alien megastructure. But when the alarms had faded and the infants' cries echoed through the empty halls, something in him had snapped. These weren't just royal offspring, they were alone, vulnerable, their multiple hearts beating too fast with fear. He'd smuggled and synthesized nectar from his own dwindling rations, hummed Earth's lullabies until their cries softened, and guarded their chamber door with nothing but a mop handle and sheer stubborn will. In the quiet hours, as he rocked them through the artificial nights, a fierce, unexpected love had bloomed in his chest, raw, protective, and terrifying in its intensity. Tonight, though, the air felt heavier. The quadruplets were rambunctious, their energy a storm that mirrored the knot of dread twisting in Mike's gut. Whispers from the palace servants had reached him through the vents. The Queen was returning. Victorious from the war that had consumed entire star systems, but merciless to any who dared touch what was hers. "She'll rip the intruder apart," one attendant had hissed. Mike didn't doubt it. He'd seen the Queen's holographic images, towering, regal, her chitinous armor forged in the fires of conquest, mandibles capable of crushing starship hulls. Yet here he was, the insignificant human, defiling her bloodline with his filthy hands. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the climate-controlled chill. Ilara nuzzled deeper into his neck, her warm breath a tiny anchor against the rising panic. "I've got you," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "All of you. No matter what." Memories flashed through his mind unbidden, the first time Kale had bitten his finger, not in anger but curiosity, drawing a bead of blood that fascinated the infant. The way Lyra had fallen asleep only when Mike sang "You Are My Sunshine," her scales shimmering in time with the melody. Thorn, the quiet one, who would stare at him with those vast, star-filled eyes as if memorizing every line of his weathered face. They had become his world in this alien prison of duty and survival. The massive vault doors to the nursery remained sealed, but the palace beyond hummed with distant activity. Mike's ears strained for any sign. Footsteps, alarms, the telltale hiss of energy weapons powering up. His heart hammered, each beat a countdown. How long had he been here? Days blurred into weeks. The infants had grown stronger under his watch, their playful tumbles more coordinated, their chirps evolving into proto-words that sounded suspiciously like mangled versions of Mike. He couldn't leave them. Wouldn't. Even if it meant his end. Suddenly, without warning, the vault doors hissed open with a pneumatic groan that shattered the fragile peace. A blast of ozone-laced air, thick with the metallic tang of battle and something primal of victory, fury, exhaustion, flooded the chamber. The bioluminescent walls flared brighter in recognition, bathing the room in harsh, accusatory light. There she stood, the alien queen. She was magnificent and terrifying, a living storm-given form. Towering nearly twice Mike's height, her chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the lights, scarred and cracked from the fires of war. Mandibles flexed with lethal precision, dripping a faint iridescent fluid. Her multifaceted eyes blazed like twin supernovas, scanning the room with predatory intensity. Battle armor clung to her powerful frame, etched with runes of conquest, and the air around her seemed to warp with residual power. Behind her, the corridor echoed with the distant clamor of her returning legions, but she had come alone unannounced, straight to the heart of her domain. The quadruplets froze mid-tumble, then erupted in a frenzy of ecstatic squeals. They scrambled toward her on all 6 limbs, claws clicking against the floor, tiny bodies quivering with instinctive joy. Kale led the charge, leaping at her leg with a joyful trill. Lyra and Thorn followed, while Ilara squirmed in Mike's arms, reaching desperately for the mother she had never truly known. Mike rose slowly, every muscle screaming in protest, his arms trembling as he held Ilara close. Time stretched into an eternity of agony. His pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out the infant's cries. This was it, the moment he dreaded in every sleepless night. She would see him, the human janitor, cradling her royal blood, and the rage would be instantaneous. Vaporized. Crushed. Torn limb from limb. He could already imagine the searing pain, the finality. But he didn't run. Couldn't. His feet rooted to the floor as he met her gaze, hands raised in a gesture of surrender that offered no real protection. "You," the queen hissed, her voice a seismic rumble that vibrated through Mike's bones and shook the very walls. It carried the weight of galaxies conquered, of enemies slain without mercy. She advanced with deliberate, earth-shaking steps, claws extended, the air thickening with lethal intent. The scent of her ozone, blood, and something ancient like starfire overwhelmed him. The quadruplets pawed at her legs, oblivious to the tension, but Mike saw everything, the flicker in her blazing eyes, shock, recognition, then a storm of maternal rage so pure it bordered on madness. He swallowed hard, throat dry as asteroid dust. "They're safe," he said, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the terror clawing up his throat like ice. "Fed every cycle. Clean. Warm. I didn't know when you'd return." The guards left. The chambers were empty. They cried for days. They needed someone. They needed me. He offered Ilara forward gently, his arms shaking with the effort, exposing his vulnerability completely. One wrong twitch, and it was over. The queen paused mere inches away, her massive form casting him entirely in shadow. Her mandibles clicked once, twice, as if tasting the air for lies. One powerful clawed hand reached out, not to strike, but to brush across Ilara's scales with a tenderness that seemed impossible for such a being. The infant cooed, and the queen's multifaceted eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Then her gaze snapped back to Mike, boring into him with unrelenting force. Her other hand rose, hovering near his shoulder, claws glinting like obsidian blades. Mike's mind raced through a lifetime in those heartbeats. He thought of Earth, the dead-end job that had led him to this contract on the edge of known space. The loneliness that had hollowed him out until these 4 filled the void. The love that had redefined everything. "I know I'm nothing to you," he continued, voice cracking now with raw emotion. "Just the janitor. But they became everything to me. I sang to them. Protected them from the cold vents and the shadows. If you have to kill me, do it quick. Just, let them remember I tried." Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. The quadruplets, sensing the shift, quieted and pressed closer, forming a living bridge between the towering queen and the small human. Lyra tugged at Mike's pant leg while pushing against her mother's armor. Thorn climbed halfway up the queen's leg before reaching back for Mike's hand. The contact sent a jolt through him, connection amid the abyss. Then, something broke. A low, broken trill escaped the queen's throat, a sound so vulnerable it shattered her imperial facade. Luminous tears, alien, glowing like captured nebulae, glistened at the edges of her eyes. Her massive shoulders trembled, the weight of war and absence crashing down in this single, suspended moment. "You guarded my heart," she murmured, her voice no longer a weapon but a fractured whisper. "When the stars demanded I abandon it. When my empire called me to bleed for them all." Her claw finally settled on Mike's shoulder, not crushing, but gripping with surprising gentleness. The touch was electric, a bridge across species and power. She pulled them both forward, human and infants, into a chaotic, desperate embrace. The quadruplets swarmed, squealing with pure delight, their tiny bodies tangling limbs and scales around the 2 guardians. Mike felt the queen's warmth seep through her armor, her multiple hearts thundering in sync with his own racing pulse. Exhaustion, relief, and a fierce, unexpected kinship washed over him in waves, so intense it brought tears to his eyes. "I saw the records," she confessed softly, mandibles brushing his hair and what might have been affection. "The feeds you thought hidden. You sacrificed your rations. Defied protocol. For them. For me." Her trill deepened, carrying centuries of loneliness from a ruler who could trust no one. "The war nearly claimed everything. But you preserved what mattered most." Mike buried his face against Ilara's scales, the scent of her mixing with the queen's battle-worn presence. The nursery lights brightened gradually, as if the palace itself sensed the shift. The unannounced returned, transforming from threat to revelation. Suspense lingered in the air, the knowledge that this peace was fragile, that empires and wars waited beyond the doors. But in this one, all-consuming scene, the alien queen and the human janitor stood bound by the quadruplets' innocent joy, their hearts forging something new amid the ruins of fear and duty. For the first time in endless cycles, the queen allowed herself to truly come home. Not as conqueror, but as mother, leaning on the unlikeliest of allies. Mike held on, the weight of her power no longer a threat but a shared shield. The infant's laughter echoed, a promise that love, in all its fierce and improbable forms, could defy even the vast indifference of the cosmos. In that nursery, under pulsing lights and watchful stars, suspense yielded to a bond forged in fire, emotionally raw, intensely alive, and unbreakable.